Hey everybody, we're gonna get started in a few minutes, but as Raj just put in the chat your name, where you're zooming in from, and what's in your cup right now. All right, Mads, I think we can cut the music and get started. So welcome everyone. It's good to see some faces, some names. If you just chat one in the chat box if this is your first time to Startup Grind. Chat one in the chat box if this is your first time to Startup Grind. Yes. And also, one quick thing. Change your name. You can do it the little blue dots or the little white dots at the corner of your face. Give us your name so that we can know who you are and say hi and welcome you. I know Spectrum Law, we'd love to see your name. Pradeep, you're new. Welcome. So for those of you who are new to Startup Grind, a couple of notes on Startup Grind. We were founded in 2010, over a decade ago, in Palo Alto, and we were the number 12th chapter, the Chicago chapter. Uh, and what's probably the coolest thing for me about Startup Grind, I'll say the coolest thing and I'll say the most important thing. The coolest thing for me about Startup Grind is that there are chapters all over the world in places that you would not imagine. There's a big chapter in Luxembourg. Why am I saying Luxembourg? You'll get it in a minute. But there's chapters all around the world, and it's really a community of people. And that's the coolest thing. But the most exciting thing are our values, a community of people that live into these values, the values of giving first, of making friends, not connections, and of helping others. And so that's what we are here at Startup Grind to do is to do these three things. It's what attracted me to Startup Grind. I know it's what attracted Madeline and Raj. Maybe you can wave hi or chat hi in the chat box. Our other co-directors to Startup Grind as well. And so our role as chapter directors of Startup Grind is to enable that for you, is to create this community and create this space and bring amazing speakers to give as well, to share their insights, their experience, their background. And so we definitely have that for you today. But one of the things that we also want to do is give you a chance to connect with one another. And we're going to do probably a 5 or 6 minute breakout group where you're going to get sent into rooms with a couple other startup grinders. And you're going to have a chance to do two things. Very, very simple things. You're going to share, Pradeep, one thing that you like to help others with and one thing that you're looking for help in, one thing that you need help with. And it doesn't mean anybody has to solve anybody's problems in this room. It's just a great way to introduce yourself and connect and share a little about yourself and learn about somebody else. So we're going to send you into the rooms. I encourage you not to just say, hey, this is my name, this is my, the company I work for, but share one thing that you like to help others with and one thing that you need help with yourself. And I am going to send you all into rooms and we'll come back in 5 minutes. See y'all soon.
All awesome to be here. All right, who wants to kick off? I'm just gonna pick someone. Sean, you're the closest to my screen in the Zoom grid, so
very good. Okay, that's good enough.
Something you can help with, something you need help with.
Yeah. So I have one thing I like to do is I've got a bit of an experience in construction, and my dad was a tradesman and general contractor, so I've got quite a bit of experience there. And so I like to offer advice to people who are doing remodeling projects, and I've done remodel projects, my own homes, and complete teardowns. And so that's something I like to offer. It's a complicated process and emotionally draining. So if I can help somebody there, that's great. Something that I need help with would be, I think, online marketing would be something that would be very useful. I don't have a lot of capability there in terms of use of social media or setting up a funnel system for leads and things like that. And so that's a place that I could benefit from some assistance.
And is that specifically for contracting stuff, like contract business?
Oh, sorry. No, my contracting. Well, I do some of that, but I just have a general LLC right now. I've got some consultancy opportunities, I think, with regard to software consultancy and project management kind of stuff related to software and data projects.
Awesome. By the way, that hologram, do you work at Hologram as well?
Well, good record. I forgot I had it on. I just came from working out. I was at Hologram. I was their service manager for a period of time there for about 6 months or so. And I got a deep background in wireless engineering and then data engineering, automation, project management kind of stuff. So
awesome. I asked because I led a kickoff at their sales kickoff meeting earlier back in January. I did like a training session for their sales team.
Ah, great. Yeah. Okay. Say hi to everybody over there for me. I worked very closely with Pat, the CTO.
Okay. Cool. Let's go over to, thank you for sharing. Let's go over to Matt. We only have, oh my God, 5 minutes went by so quickly. How is that possible? That was way too quick.
Hi, guys.
No, but that wasn't 5.
We should ask for time.
Matt, real quick, give us how can you help?
I'm working on getting the avatar to talk. My name's Matt. I'm good at lots of things with digital media. I could probably help you out with that, depending on what you're looking for. A funnel system doesn't sound, I hear what you're saying. It sounds like what you're looking for is IBM. What I need help with, this is my first time. So I went through an accelerator and now the LLC is a C Corp. And like C Corp taxes for startups remotely is kind of challenging. So I'm still trying to find somebody to talk to that's trustworthy to help me with my C Corp taxes.
I have like a outsourced CFO company who's amazing. They may be a good fit for you.
Cool. We could talk about it.
Sweet.
Hit me up.
Okay. We have 9 seconds left.
Next time the avatar.
One statement can you tell us to send us off in 4 seconds?
Yeah. Check out.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope we had a chance to do a little bit of connection, a little bit of sharing and learning from one another. But now what you really came for, the topic of today, which is investing in deep tech and deep space. And we have a very special guest. Maria, I'm giving this a try. Maria Huesas Portoles. And everybody, can you do me a favor? I'm going to say her name one more time, and everybody's going to unmute themselves, scream, cheer as loud as you can, as if your favorite sports team just won, whatever the championship it is. So unmute yourself, get ready, get loud, and cheer on 3, 2, 1. Maria Huesas Portoles.
Maria.
Woo! Woo! So we'll ask everybody to actually, for now, you can just take off your cameras and you can mute yourselves again. We're lucky enough to have Maria. Maria, I before we even get started, I brought up Luxembourg because Maria is living and lives in Luxembourg, which means it's 1 a.m. her time. Yeah. And she stayed up amidst angel investing she's doing, amidst her business and Promus Ventures that she's working with, amidst all the stuff that's going on in her life, to share her insights and her background and experience and story with us. So Maria, thank you. Thank you for staying up, for giving us your energy tonight.
No, thank you
and I
for
know
inviting
the
me.
community's very grateful for it.
Thank you so much for inviting me over.
So one of the things we love to do, and I'm curious about, is, obviously I'm very curious about deep space and deep tech and to even know what that all means. But I want to go, before we get there, I'd love to know about Maria. Like, what was Maria doing as a kid? Like, tell me your story, but take me all the way back to you as a kid. Give me the story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, given my accent, you know that I'm originally from Spain, right? I was so to be fair, I changed my career completely on the last minute because I was gonna be a doctor since I was a kid. I was born and raised in Valencia on the East Coast, so really great weather. It's kind of like the weather of that you will find in San Diego, but way on the other side of of the spectrum. So yeah, so I to be fair, I enjoyed playing. I was really focused on what I wanted to do in my life, and at that point I wanted to be the greatest doctor ever, without realizing that like life happens and change come to play, and at the end of the day, I decided to be more interested in investing than I was in in curing people, which is sad to be said, but it's the true story. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to have like two big brothers. So I've been like the kind of the protected kid when I was when I raised, and thanks to them I realized what I wanted to do in life. I realized that I wanted to change kind of my obsession around medicine and change to be on the investment side, and yeah, and that I was, to be fair, in a nice family, really strong like team, I will call it, and I was lucky enough to be raised there. And then moving forward a little bit, as I mentioned before, I entered into, so I was one of the best students in my university. And then I got into a transnational program in which I went to study into the US. So I was doing a double degree between Spain and the US in North Carolina. So everyone asked me like how the difference was between coming back to North Carolina from Spain, and for me it was one of the greatest experience ever. I to be fair, I met one of the most amazing and helping people that I've found up until now. So yeah, I studied in North Carolina for quite a while, and I graduated from university there, and then I moved into New York. That was a different, completely different world from North Carolina, and for sure from Valencia in Spain. I enter, I was so sure what I wanted to do in my life. I think
So let me
naive.
pause. At this
Yeah,
point, at what point, like, so you're in school in Valencia, and what are you studying there?
I was, no, yeah. So it's completely different to the US, right? So in Spain, the way that we do it is like you have to decide what you want to do in life, which for me is not too straightforward, but like you have to decide what to do in life when you're 17 years old. So if you decide, yeah, it's a little bit different from the US, which is way more. I feel like for me it's better, right? Because when you're 17 years old, you don't know what you want to do, so you enter into this generic kind of program, and then afterwards you decide what you want to do in life, right? And then you have a little bit of a concept around everything. For us, it's like with 17, you say, okay, I want to do medicine. I'm going to to be a doctor, and then you're 6 years on the road, like studying for it, and then you are in finance. You do finance for 5 years, and then that's it. The same
Wait,
with
so when
lawyers.
you, so you're telling me, or I'm making some jumps here, but when you said I wanted to be a doctor and then I decided what I really want, I thought maybe like in your life journey things
No,
change. And it's like, no, when you're 17,
yeah,
what,
because
how did you, like, how did you come
um,
to that decision?
because it's the way that it works here, right? Well, here in Spain, is basically you. So 2 years prior to your 17, you enter into kind of this specialization, which will be kind of the basic studies, if you want to call it that way, in uni. And then at that point, you decide which area you want to take, like the economical side, where most of the people go to either finance, economics, or whatever it is on that spectrum. Then you go to the kind of medicine area, in which most of the people, what they study is physics, chemics, and then biology, etc. So that kind of takes you to medicine and all the layers around that. And then the third one, which is the more technological driven, is basically doing like, engineering or things around that front. In my case, I did biology and I was completely going for that, right? And then when you're 17, you decide which career path you want to take, and that's going to be it. I mean, afterwards you can change plenty of times and then you can sift around, but for us it's like kind of a big decision in time, because that will mean, like, imagine that you enter into doing medicine and then you realize that you want to be an engineer. That's going to be a tough change, right? Because there's kind of, your background hasn't been there, you haven't done like physics or like specific maths towards that. So you can do it 100%. It's just, it will take a little bit longer, and then you potentially have lose a few years on your life, right? So yeah, so in 17, you better be mature enough to make your life choice.
You don't even have, like, your brain's not even fully formed by 17. That's so fascinating. Okay, so let me make sure I'm tracking along. So 17, you decide, okay, I want to go into investment. This is the space I want to go into. It's more interesting to me. It's more exciting. You go to North Carolina at some point. You do some school, then you go to North Carolina, and you do more schooling on the finance investment side. And then you go to New York. And are we still in school at that point, or what's going on in your journey there?
Yeah, so well, to be completely fair, at 17, I wanted to be a doctor. The day before that, I decided that which university I was gonna pick in my career, in my like you have a paper, you do an exam, and then depending on your grades, you enter in one university versus the other, like similar to the US in that regards. And then the day before, I decided, hey, I don't know, I want to do finance, right? So yeah, it was a career, I mean, left and changed in one day. But yeah, things that happen in life, and I'm really grateful of that. But like, so yeah, I was in North Carolina, and basically I needed to do kind of an internship before graduating. It was part of the program, otherwise I will not be graduating. And don't ask me why. I was so sure that I wanted to do hedge funds. I was completely sure about it. I think I was naive. I didn't know the options. I didn't know any other, potential investment point that you could enter besides public markets. And so in my head, the only thing that I found interesting was like hedge funds. So I think I contacted like 300 companies at that point to make to do an internship in hedge funds. And I'm almost 21, and I wanted to live in one of these cities, like either it could be New York, San Francisco, LA, or Miami. And because in my mind it was like, I want to do 6 years of 6 months of like working in an internship in one of these places, right? And live there and see the experience. And I was lucky enough, after, like, believe me, what it was like a 16 hours drive and bumping into New York, saying, hey, I'm here for, I was stopping by in New York, while actually I was in North Carolina with no internship or anything around that, with no connections in New York. And I was like knocking pretty much doors saying, hey, do you want an intern for free?
I love that.
Yeah.
Just like putting yourself out there, just driving there and saying, I'm here, I want to help, knocking on doors. So how many doors did you have to knock on until someone said, sure?
Wow, I cannot, like, you, I don't, if the only count that I have, it was like, I sent like 300 resumes, and I'm not kidding. And in New York, potentially was not that many, but it was around Thanksgiving, and I remember eating Thanksgiving with a friend of mine in McDonald's. Because obviously we are not, like for us it's not a big deal, right? We don't come home for Thanksgiving, and then we were there because we wanted an internship, so we were so desperate to find it one that we knock every single door at a time, and at the point that we finished with all the people that we wanted to stop by and be physically there, we were so tired that we were like, we're not gonna cook anything. We're gonna do McDonald's because it's the only thing open. And we are almost broke because we rented an apartment in New York, and going like 16 hours for like 4 or 5 or 6 days, I don't even remember, that we were like, yeah, this is the maximum that we can afford at this point in time. So basically I got lucky, and one of the hedge funds was a global macro hedge fund, decided to take me in. So they were doing Latin America at the beginning. So it was part of a bank. It was a hedge fund, part of a export and import bank in Latin America. And they were based in New York, Miami, Panama City, and a few other locations, to be fair. And as part of the bank, they used to have the hedge fund. So I started working with them as an intern. And to be fair, it was like a 6 months internship. And I was lucky enough, on the second day, they gave me this kind of project of like, you have to program something for the back office in Panama. And like they were like, this is your project for the internship, and then you will be able to come into the investment committees, into calls with people, etc. So I was like, yeah, I was so happy. And the funny part is like they gave me a project that was for like for all my internship, and I was like so angry, with so much hunger for like learning, that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna learn as much as I can, because after 6 months I'm coming back to Spain. So so basically I did my project in like, I think it was like on the 1.5 months, I programmed what I was meant to program in 6 months. So at that point they were like, oh wait, this is not completely useless, right? This scale is not completely useless. So they were really, really good to me, and they decided to sponsor my visa and to hire me after the second or third month that I was there. And so they hired me for being on the kind of on the half on the operational, so back office a bit, and then on the research team at the beginning, and risk side. And then at that point, it was kind of the Volcker rule going on in the US. And so no bank could be holder of a hedge fund. So basically, the hedge fund went through a process of spinning out, and the management company, so the management team, like the people on the CIO, the head of trading, this CSO, everyone bought the company, so bought the hedge fund and spin out and become their own hedge fund as a side, where the bank was just a pure LP, a minority LP, but it was not the majority shareholder of the hedge fund, which is what the Volcker rule prevented the bank to do. So
did
at that
you
point,
spin off with them?
Yeah, I spin off with them. This was like since 6 months after I started. So I was already like on the process of going through, I signed my papers for like being hired, and I was on the process of going through the visa issues like the H-1B for working in the US. So, I was on the whole spin out process, which was really, really interesting, way more challenging than I thought any, hedge fund spin out process will be. And then at that point, I kind of changed a little bit more, and I went to be kind of the right hand of the head of trading, as well as on the research side. And I was doing a little bit of marketing as well on the investment side. So basically I was the one going with the marketing team to, tell what we were doing in terms of investments and ideas generation, etc. So I was holding kind of a bit of many hats, and I was also doing kind of the risk side of the story, because some of the people left. So I was kind of with many hats. It's quite funny, because this was kind of an experience of a startup without, on the heads on the investment side, because it was kind of building something from scratch, in which point you are with many hats and many things to be built. Which was challenging at the time, but quite fun and quite busy. Learn a lot. And then after a while, I basically decided that I reached kind of my point on that fund, because it was a mid-sized one. There was the head of trading in the US, head of trading in Latin America, in Brazil, the CIO for the whole team. And then for me, to be fair, and there was not that much that I could learn anymore for like a 24 years old girl. And then what I decided was like, okay, I'm gonna change jobs, and I'm gonna go to London, and I'm gonna be closer to my family. And that was kind of a decision, also because I used to have insomnia at the time. So for me,
I'm
it was
sorry,
like,
it doesn't seem like we're helping the insomnia having you come
oh
out
no,
in the
don't worry.
morning.
It's much, even though it doesn't sound like it, it's much better now. So for me, these kind of times are completely fine. I had insomnia, so I was like, I need to change my life, and I need to be closer to my family, and I decided to leave the US and go into Europe, but not too close. I was like, London seems reasonable to me. So it's one of those points in which you realize, like, your health and your personal and mental health is worth more than a career path. And funny enough, I realized a little bit young in my career. I could have realized a little bit later, but probably the consequences would have been much worse. So I'm grateful for that. I moved to the US, to London. I entered into fund of funds kind of job to investing in hedge funds. It was interesting, but I wasn't lucky enough to enter into a team that I enjoy working for. And at that time, in which you have kind of this moment of like, I went through a personal mental health thing, that you realize how important life is and how important is surrounding yourself with people that you enjoy working with and working for. And at that point in time, I decided that, I wanted to wake up every morning, wanted to go to work and being happy about it, and doing things that I wanted to do, and push for be a better me. And so I decided to quit that job, and I went into a different hedge fund, which it was an infrastructure long-short equity fund. At that point, it's when you realize that it matters more who you are working with than what you are doing sometimes. And for me, that was kind of the point in time in which I realized that I was going to prioritize, when I change a job, who I work with more than anything, and then everything will come after. But being happy every day going to work is something that seriously there's no price at any point. And then I moved into hedge funds again to do a long-short equity fund. And this was kind of a long journey, because I basically realized that I like to invest, but I don't like hedge funds, and I don't like consolidated companies. So it was like a long process of saying what I don't like, and because I had no idea what I like, besides that I like to invest. And so I realized that, I didn't wake up in the morning saying, okay, how is, like a big Exxon doing and how they are, moving the stock in like 1% or 0.002%, or, they changed the projections in a 5-year period. And I didn't wake up every morning, looking
That
forward
makes
to
me
that
tired
moment.
to think about
Yeah,
it.
me
That
too.
does not, it sounds
100%.
incredibly boring.
Yeah, and I realized that if you are not enjoying something, you're never going to be the best one at it, right? And for me, it was okay. I want to invest. I don't want to do companies that are established companies that I have zero impact on their journey, besides speculating on the price of the stock and how they're going to perform to make money out of it. And so at that point, what I decided was, okay, I'm going to see how a fund works overall, like from the CEO, from compliance, from operation, and from things that I hadn't had the chance to explore before. Because if I ever want to run my own kind of fund, I know how the whole thing works, right? And I'm a little bit better prepared to take that job in. So at the point that I learned the whole thing, I decided that, that was the maximum of my career. And then my dad, which is a little bit older, got a little bit sick. So I decided to change again countries. And I decided to it says what I want to do, but I was like, yeah, no one is going to hire me because I want to do venture capital. And I came from like hedge funds, right? So who will do that? So I decided to enter into my MBA. So in order to change paths and careers. And at the same time that I entered my MBA in London, I was doing my MBA between London and Hong Kong. And then at the time that I entered into my MBA in London, I got a job in venture capital in Madrid. And given that I wanted to come back into Spain to stay closer to my family, etc., I was lucky enough to get a job in the reason for me to enter into an MBA on the first place, right? So I literally entered into the MBA with my objective of changing careers to venture capital, but on kind of the first month I entered in my MBA, I already had changed careers to what I wanted to do at the end of the MBA. So yeah, I was really lucky, and I loved that job. I was doing M&A and minority stake investments into companies in the fintech, insurtech, and deep tech, more on the data side. So anything that will be related to a bank, because I was working in a corporate venture capital fund. So it was part of one of the largest Spanish banks. And we were doing a few of M&A deals as well as like minority stake investments at that point. And they were also running inside a venture builder, which was discontinued when they realized that running a startup from a corporate point of view is really, really expensive and not too efficient. But the investments.
This was kind of your start into deep tech. You mentioned
exactly. Yes. Exactly. So that was.
And it looks like one of the things you've done. I know there are people on here who like wanting to dive into deep tech and deep space, and so like what made that the core focal point of what you and Primus have decided to do? Like, why deep tech? Why deep space?
Well, so at that point, I was not in Promus yet. So I was in a corporate venture capital, was part of a bank, and the deep tech side was my choice, basically. I always liked tough things, and I decided, so we were doing mostly fintech and insurtech, but then I became interested in everything that has to do with IT and with data. And then from that, I was kind of more specialized on that data front. And then at the time, so kind of parallel to that, myself together with 3 other people in the industry, we've been working together for a while, and we decided that we love to work together, and we love to invest, in startups and helping startups from scratch. So we created our own syndicate, our own angel syndicate, and it's been around for a while now, and we invest like small amounts into companies that we like across the board in all the industries, deep tech as well as like more mainstream business, like, mobility, energy as well, and a few others. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to kind of gain exposure. And I don't know if it's something that I want to do for life. And I must be and super honest. But I wanted to gain a little bit more exposure onto the deep tech world. And then this opportunity came up in the in Luxembourg, which where I'm based right now, which is Promus Ventures, and they are a US venture capital firm. They were around since 2012. They've done more than 85 investments so far around deep tech and space tech. They have 3 offices: San Francisco, Chicago, and Luxembourg now. And they were launching a dedicated fund in Europe around space technologies. And that kind of, kick me in and say, hey, I really want to try this. I really want to learn from experienced people in deep tech and space, into a part of a world that I believe that is going to boom in a few years. And I think it's kind of the right time to be in it. So I decided to enter into space technologies, which is super specific and dedicated kind of vertical to be in. But I've managed to learn a lot from them. I'm really grateful, to be honest, to be part of the team. And that's how I end up where I am right now, which is we're investing in deep tech and space companies.
Yeah, and you've invested over $3 billion, right?
Yes, I mean, to be fair, the partners did.
Partners
I'm not gonna take the,
So, but as an organization, so how, like, what are some of the things that you look for when you're investing in something that's so, I mean, all business is variable, but deep space is very variable. What do you look for, and how do you think about the right things the opportunities to invest in?
Yeah, so I mean, to be completely honest, it's not that you are looking for completely different thing that you will look into any other vertical, right? Because at the end of the day, it depends on which stage of the picture you're entering. And we're entering into early phases. And for sure, there is people that this is one of those verticals that you invest in really technical people and really, really, really experienced people, right? Otherwise, you don't invest. It's not like saying in a fintech company or in a mobility company that you can invest from a guy who, has done some random things in the past. He's a great guy. You think he's a really good leader, a really good founder of the startup, and then you think he can take it to the next step. In here, there is really a technical point that you cannot forget. And in my case, from my perspective, the team is kind of like one of the most important parts in really early phases. But in deep tech, it's also enriched, or something that you have to take a lot into account is the technical side of the team as well, and the background of the team and the connections of the team, because in a space, at least, like, connections matter, because you need to get into big contracts, like either with space governments, agencies in the US, in Europe, or in any other country. And your background matters in that regards, and your technical kind of point, why you're doing something and why we are going to believe that you're going to make it way more efficient, or you're going to create something that no one has been able to create before. And that is not going to be like, you're not going to be able to see it during the first few years, right? So if you're investing in it,
Your
if you're
investment
investing,
horizons, like, what's a typical investment horizon for your businesses compared to, let's say, an average venture firm?
yeah, no, I mean, our investment horizon is 10 years, but I must say, like, that needs to shift at some point, right? Because come to realize, like, well, from one side, the more and more companies are going into SPAC earlier, earlier in the sense that way earlier than many other companies in different verticals will go, because of the stage that they are and the capital needs that they required. So that's one of the exits that is a natural exit right now for many space companies. And then the second one is like, I think there needs to be kind of a safety mentality around the horizon, right, in these investments, because 10 years for some of these companies means nothing. It means probably when they are on the stage of, starting to break even. So it's kind of like completely different to many other verticals. And I must admit that these investment cycles that we do have, I mean, from the point of view of investment, you always have in mind, and you always enter into companies that, they're a little bit more mature in their phases. So despite being still early, they have done the whole development. They have a few years of research already on the back. And then you enter into a point in which you see that either you realize soon enough that they're going to shift, that they're going to do like really, really well and become a company with few LOIs, or you already invest in companies that have LOIs in place, right? Because that kind of pushes or advances your and makes sure that your investment period sticks to 10 years, right? Which is what you need. But more and more people, and I think everyone is realizing that these 10 years is becoming kind of not enough for many of these companies for kind of make or realize your investment. I mean, if you're an early investor, it's fine because you can exit to a different, later stage guys, growth or PE, or they go to SPAC. But it's one of those things that even more we're realizing that even for early stage guys, like these investment periods are taking longer than they used to take before.
So it just, yeah, I mean, the thing that's going through my head too is you get to meet with and talk with these brilliant people in deep space and deep tech. And just out of curiosity, what are some of the most, and this is, I think Dimitri asked this too, what are some of the most exciting innovations that you're seeing come out? I feel like it's probably watching, sci-fi TV, but in real life, what are some of the more exciting ones that you're seeing?
To be completely honest, I'm humbled to be able to speak to all these guys that are, I mean, it's a different level of people. Like I every time that I speak with one of these amazing young guys, I'm like, what did I do with my life? Why I wasted all these years? But because they have a background that is beyond impressive. And for me, there's a few companies or a few technologies that are, personally wise, I've been impressed with. Ones are the ability to kind of look into below kind of the ground through a satellite. So being able to explore what is below the ground in the earth, a few meters down from a satellite. That's, I mean, if that goes well, the implications of that, it's huge, right? There's many companies potentially interested in using that level information. So for me, I mean,
not just on Earth either. That's like in deep space, being able to use that too
Yeah.
is incredible. There's a lot of applications for that.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, that one is one of the most amazing things that I've seen so far. If they perform it and they end up doing it well and all that, because it's still a little bit early to say that.
We just talked about time horizon, so everybody hopefully understands that these are innovative ideas and innovations. They're not things that are out there in the market today. Okay, so that's one of them. What are some of the others?
And most of the other ones, which I found super interesting, and I do believe there is a market for it, and I do believe there is things coming, right? But that's also like many people could debate around it, and we can have a whole different conversation around it. But it's around exploration and kind of space utilization. So kind of thinking around microgravity, thinking about potential usage of,
Microgravity.
yeah. So for
Tell me
instance,
more.
yeah. So there's a few companies, some of them doing semiconductors in space and then bringing them out, wanting to do that and then bringing them back. No one has done it yet, but that's a different story, as I said before. Or the most interesting ones for me, which is around pharma, right? So being able to produce specific vaccines or antibodies on Earth and then bring it back here into in the orbit and then bring it back to Earth in specific conditions, etc. So kind of creating these labs where you can see how things being built there can impact the real life here and have a strong impact in different sides of the business. But pharma for me is one of that could potentially be super interesting.
I like
Exploring
that.
that side.
Would have never thought about pharma being a deep space.
Yeah, there is a few companies
Fascinating.
now wanting to do like this micro lab in a space because they can manage to produce specific things. I don't want to get into kind of details, but in a space and then bringing them back here because the way that they get so the composition of it gets shifted a bit, and then when you bring it here, like making it that in Earth is like super expensive, impossible. Then there is like, despite the whole cost, if you make it in production, a mass, right? If you make a mass production of it, it's way more interesting, right?
The unit cost drop by going to space. That just blows my freaking mind.
Yeah, no, yeah, that when you become like in production, like massive production, right? Because there is so many specific things that being done here is like almost like super impossible, super expensive. And in terms of materials, it's not that straightforward, right? Because these days, shortage of materials is one of a different story, right? So yeah, it's not something that is going to happen tomorrow. I think we are talking around years here, but that's what it makes kind of me being interested in it, in the sense that we don't realize how many things in a space impact our day-to-day life and could impact even more in the future. And yeah, so basically it sounds crazy, and I know it. And I know, given the cost, that saying that is completely ridiculous. But I think not now for sure, but in a few years down the line, around 10 years maybe, there's that availability of resources, let's put it that way, in a space will have some kind of impact in some of these industries in Earth. And to be fair, like, we don't realize, but most of what we do day to day or what we rely on every day depend on space infrastructure, which is, it's quite funny when I say to people, like, yeah, we invest in a space, and not only like things being sent to space, but also the downstream market, which is, more like applications into different industries. And that could entail like using satellite imaging, or even the use of GPS at this point is coming from an infrastructure in space, right? So we've been affected from pretty much anything that it's in a space on these days, right? On our life. Like, I don't think my life will be the same if I will not have this space infrastructure. And I hope that infrastructure changes and matures, like, creating more accurate GPS, creating more accurate timing, and things like that, because that could have a huge impact on us.
And that's fascinating, because when I think of deep space, right, I think of like space exploration, and you're probably seeing all the things in the chat, right? Like all these different things, like going out into outer space. But the way you're sharing it, it's the infrastructure that supports how we live today in a lot of ways. And there already is significant, it's not like not all of it's so far off. Some of it's like, hey, this is how we live today with this infrastructure, and you invest in companies that are future forward on the infrastructure. It sounds like on the pharmaceutical, like on the things that affect Earth, and also things that go out there too. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. So we actually haven't announced it yet, but we invested in a company on that front, specifically on the space exploration, and kind of a microgravity kind of a startup that it will potentially bring back and forward things from Earth to the moon or to orbit.
Are we talking space elevators here?
Sorry?
Are we talking space elevators?
No. No, we are not.
So it's a company that will help transport things between space and Earth much more.
Yeah, they have many other things right on the pipeline, but yeah, one of them is like kind of to the moon, to orbit or whatever is needed, and then come back to Earth. So then those applications that we were mentioning before become a little bit more, closer in time, when that ability is there to be done in an efficient, cost efficient way, right? To be done, because at this point, many of the companies that are not exploding, like they're not utilizing this because it's super expensive. So in the moment that those costs shrink significantly because they become a little bit more commoditized, that's when we will see many more use cases for the space infrastructure that we have in place.
It's fascinating. What I'm curious about is, this is what you spend your time doing, is talking about this future, right? How does that impact your day to day? Like, how's like spending time in this future state and planning with people and investing and thinking about it change how you think about just how you show up on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I mean, I think you become more aware of, what will happen if you will not have that space infrastructure. And I mean, I don't think it affects me much. I think it's makes me humble of like those people that go into that journey, because it's not this, I feel it's, I mean, being a space entrepreneur, it's a different story, because you have to sell people that you want to do something that sounds like crazy. That then you want like a 300 million to do that because it sounds crazy, and then that you're not going to give any return in potentially like 5-6 years, and then you're not going to know if that's going to work in like 4 years, right? So like you see those guys and you see their huge ambition, and that's what affects me more than seeing what they are able to do. Like, seeing those kind of people in the world, I feel like, hey, like I'm grateful for those people, like having the bravery of going out there and actually fighting, because they're fighting for becoming like for going beyond what we have right now to create something new that is huge, that will have an impact on this earth, that will affect positively many lives, because that's kind of the effect of sending something out there. Many companies, of not everyone but many companies, is for an impact on an application on our lives, right, on a day-to-day basis. So that's what's, for me, it's kind of I see with a different eyes, right? And you also have to think that I have my own like fund on the side, like this venture syndicate, where there is completely different companies across the board, and then you realize that these space companies are enabler for all these other startups in many other industries. So making their startups being able to be done. So yeah, it's kind of to see the full picture beyond what we need in 2 to 3 or 4 years from now, but more where we can get in like 10 to 20 years from now, right? And where will we be getting at that point in time, and the impact that that can have in our day-to-day life.
It's just so inspiring and fascinating. And I like, as you were saying that, it's so true that this is like the founder. This isn't the traditional founder story that we hear these days, but it's the founder who's creating this new vision for the world, literally, and working their tails off over, several years, not 2 to 3. But I like how you said the time horizon is very, very different, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I'm just so grateful, Maria, for you to share your energy, your time, your middle of the night time, to share not only your just incredibly inspiring story, but your perspective on the world, your perspective on the investment world, and to help me at least change my perspective on deep space. It's not so far off. It's not so out there. It's actually something that's impacting us today. And I'm just so grateful. And everybody else, can you unmute yourselves and give Maria a huge round of applause and a little bit of a thank you and gratitude for a
Thank you, guys.
wonderful night.
So great.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Maria.
This was absolutely wonderful. Such a fun talk, and thank you for your time, your effort, your energy. Everybody have a wonderful evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. Have a wonderful holiday if you're hitting holidays. And just say, if everyone before you sign out can do one thing for me, one thing in the chat box, share a word or phrase to describe what today was like for you, what you got out of this, just a word or phrase. And that'll be helpful. Maria gets to see that inspiring impact. Patience is my word. Appreciation.
Patience.
Patience. Sci-fi becoming sci-fact. I love it. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your evening, morning, day. Maria, get some sleep.
Yeah.
Be well. Take care, everyone. And we'll have the recording for you tomorrow. Cheers.
Bye.